Hi, good afternoon. This is Rob Litzenberger once again. I'm going to give a go at part number 2 of my Viking Memories videos. And I got a lot of good comments on part number 1. I appreciate that. And so we'll go with the part 2. I know you can hear some background noise here. My Basset Hound, Leland, has decided that right now is the time that he's going to eat. So I apologize for the crunching in the background. That's just the way he is. He does what he wants, when he wants. It's his way or no way. He's a typical Basset Hound. Anyway, my questions that came up for me during my first or after my first video, some of the questions I got were, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? What have you been doing? Where are you now? And second of all, which actually I got more responses on, was my lack of, for those of you that know me pretty well, my lack of movement on the right side of my face. Doesn't quite work right. And I appreciate you noticing that. No worries. I did not have a stroke or any kind of paralysis that was serious. What I did have is Bell's palsy, or I do have. And I just woke up with it one morning 15 years ago. And most people that have Bell's palsy, if you know what Bell's palsy is, it's an affliction that affects the muscles and the nerves in one side of your face divided by a center line right down the middle. And for me, it's the right side of my face, you can see. And it's not painful. It's not threatening in any way. It's more of just an inconvenience. Most people that have Bell's palsy recover completely from it in just a few months. Some people it takes a little longer, and then there's a very select few that don't ever fully recover. And so far, I'm one of the very select few. Lucky me. But I appreciate your concern. I'm doing fine. Life is good. It just makes me look a little more stupid than I always did. So I appreciate that. But we live in Shakopee, Minnesota, and Shakopee, Minnesota, Minnesota. Shakopee, Minnesota is a southwestern suburb of Minneapolis, and we've been here for just about 11 years. It'll be 11 years in another 2 weeks. And I left Viking in 1997, and I've had a really good career since then as well in the trucking business, and I am now semi-retired. I try to do as little as possible, which is pretty tough sometimes with the list of stuff that my wife comes up with. But I do drive a bus part-time for MVTA, which is the Minnesota Valley Transit Authority. I drive a bus for a couple, maybe 2.5 hours a day. On the weekday mornings, I drive an express transit bus from the suburbs into downtown, taking all those lucky people to work, and then I drop them off and I get to go home. So it's a good gig. I love it. I really enjoy doing it. And other than that, I am semi-retired. So life is good. But I want to back up a little bit after getting that all out of that way. You know, during my time as a line driver, was some of my happiest time at Viking. I was a line driver for 3 or so years or more. Great memories from all the people there, all the times that we had there. And one time I decided, at one point I decided that I wanted to do more than just be a driver. I'm not sure why I thought that, but I decided that maybe there was more for me at Viking than being a line driver or a dock worker or anything. And so I got the bright idea to write a letter to Dick Bangham, expressing my interest to maybe become a dock supervisor or dispatcher or something like that. So I hand wrote a letter on a legal pad to Dick, and I sent it to him in interoffice mail on, I don't know, it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday. And before the end of the week, I was a dock supervisor at West Bay. Apparently they needed one and figured I was just the character for it. And I was very fortunate to get that chance. I did have to go in for an interview with Dick Bangham, Randy Bangham, Terry Stambaugh. I can't remember who else was in there, but, you know, thinking I should make a good impression, I got all dressed up, put a tie on. That was my first mistake. And went in for this interview, and little did I know at the time, I was the very first person to ever go through one of these interviews with this new program they set up as far as management candidates. So I was the guinea pig. I didn't know it, but I was the guinea pig. And when I went in there and sat down in front of all these guys, we had a good talk. And to me, They were family, so it was a pretty casual atmosphere. But the very first thing that happened, the very first thing besides me sitting down, was Dick Bangham stood up and he said to me, "You got a lot to learn." And he walked over to me with a pair of scissors and he cut my tie off. That was it. He said, "We don't wear those here." So that was my first introduction to the management style of Viking, which I think you and I are very grateful for. So, but I did become a dock supervisor in the evenings, and that's where I began to work with Rusty Mooring. Of course, you remember Rusty. Joe Baum, Bob Whitley, Brian Nigro, so many people we worked on the night dock. Dave Johnson, of course you remember Dave Johnson, and was a night dock supervisor for, gosh, I want to say probably maybe a few months, maybe not even quite a year, and then I was recruited to come into the safety department. I had expressed interest as moving up in the company, and it's kind of one of those things where you be careful what you wish for. And before I knew it, I was a safety and training instructor. I worked in the building behind the shop, or I should say above the shop, I guess, in Santa Clara. If you remember the upstairs portion above the shop in the yard there, there were some classrooms up there and a couple offices, and I worked up there as a safety and training instructor, safety supervisor. Worked with John Morris. You remember him? He originally started in Orange County, I believe, or Los Alamitos. Scott Bishop, of course, Terry Stambaugh, Linda Bittner was our secretary, Ron Bailey. Ron Bailey did the road patrol out there at night, was watching us when we were line drivers, who, by the way, had a pretty tough job because he had to make the people above him happy doing the job he had to do, and he had to try not to get the line drivers to kill him for reporting us speeding when we were out there, which we all did. We know it. I know it. We know it. So he had a tough job to do, but Ron was a good guy. So there were several people that I worked with up there. Dave Yanamoto, I'm sorry, I can't forget Dave Yanamoto. We all worked in the safety department up there. And I taught hundreds of driver training classes up there that dealt with company policy and hazmat and so forth. Hundreds of people came through my classes. I did pretty much one a week for over 3 years. And to this day, the people that came to these classes were from all over the country. That Viking had flown in for the training. It was mandatory if you're going to be a driver, you had to go through this training. And for a long time, even up until recently, I could be in an airport somewhere in the country, and somebody will remember my name. They'll say, "Hey, Rob." I have no clue who they are, but they remember me from the Viking training class, and that's pretty amazing. That's a pretty amazing thing. It's a small world, which you'll hear more about later. In my later points in my career with other companies, you'll hear me talk about people from Viking that I worked with again or ran into again. It's interesting. It's a small world, and we were a family. We are a family, and it was very interesting. So I worked as a safety and training supervisor for quite a while, and I enjoyed that very much. It was really good training new people, new drivers, teaching them about hazardous materials and so forth. And it was fun to work with them all week, and then by the end of the week see the light bulb come on above their head that they had learned something, and they learned from what I had taught them, and they went back to their terminals and became productive drivers and did very well. Became an asset for Viking, basically. And then in about January of 1985, I was approached by Rusty Mooring, who at that time had become the West Bay terminal manager, and he asked me to come to work at West Bay again, this time as an operations manager. And that was a huge step up for me, being an operations manager. I started at West Bay as a dock worker at $4 an hour, driver, local driver, line driver, dock supervisor, and now I have a chance to be an operations manager at the terminal where I first started. Was a huge honor. Once again, working with Bob Whitley, Rusty Mooring, and Steve Boudreau, Jim Minium, Joe Baum, all the people who were around when I first started are still there, except now we're all in various positions within the company, and all still leading Viking on the best that we can. One thing I want to make sure of, in fact, as we go on here a little bit, I don't want to go too much farther, but with part two, but during the time that I was an operations manager, we would do things to try to promote our thanks to the drivers and the people, the dock workers and the clerical staff at the terminals. And one of the things we did, of course, was have the barbecues outside in the evenings, after the shifts were over, either at noon or in the evening, so that everybody could attend and have some burgers and brats or whatever and have a good time. And one particular night, I remember it very well, Rusty Mooring, who was working the barbecue with me at that time, suffered a heart attack. It was a scary time. It was traumatic for all of us, especially Rusty, of course. And little did I know that that would be the moment that catapulted me into higher positions at Viking. And the reason I bring that up is because Rusty always taught me to do his job. He was the terminal manager. I was the operations manager. Rusty always taught me to do my best, to do his job. He always taught me my job was to make him look good. And I did that as often as I could. I tried so hard. When Rusty had his heart attack, he required open heart surgery, and he was off work for a long time. And I suddenly became the acting terminal manager at West Bay. Me, who at 31 years old, now one of the youngest acting terminal managers in the system, I suddenly became a terminal manager at the terminal where I started. And it's important that the reason I want to mention this, and I go into detail about this, is because I want to mention that I was very successful during that time while Rusty was gone, only because Rusty taught me to do his job, and everybody in that terminal who had anything to do with West Bay are the ones that helped me succeed when Rusty was off. I get a lot of credit, I got a lot of credit during that time for how well the terminal ran and how well things went and how well everything operated. I got a lot of praise, which followed me through my career after that. And I've always wanted to tell somebody as a group that it would have never happened that way had it not been for the people at West Bay. The dispatchers, the other operations people, the clerical people, Terry Renahan, Celia and OS&D and Terry, the Brian Nigro, Ray Perrin, Bill Spears, for gosh sakes, Bill Spears, Bob Whitley, Joe Baum, the other people who were supervisors and operations people there. And then, of course, the drivers, the local drivers, the line drivers, the dock workers. Rusty was off work. He could not work, and I was tasked with taking over the terminal, and I didn't have to do anything different. The people at West Bay is what made that terminal run. The drivers, the dock workers, the clerical people, the supervisors, they did it, not me. I was just fortunate enough to have my name on it, and I did get some praise from it, and I succeeded future careers because of that. But I just want it to be known that had it not been for those people, we would have not succeeded the way we did, and I'm very grateful for that. I thank you, and you guys were awesome, so don't ever forget that. Anyway, enough of that. So anyway, so I was able to successfully work with all of you at the terminal there, and we did succeed. Eventually, Rusty was able to come back to work, thankfully, and shortly after that, I was promoted to terminal manager in Phoenix and Tucson. Phoenix had already been opened at that time. Tucson was the new terminal that was going to open, and so I was going to operate, manage the Phoenix terminal, and then assist in opening the new Tucson terminal, the brand new Tucson terminal, which I did. So more of that will be coming up in part 3, if you allow me to do that. If there's not too much hate mail from part 2. But there's so many people that I remember from these days. I can't thank everybody enough that I worked with, and the memories, the good memories. We had so much fun. We were a family. We worked hard. We worked long hours. We did a lot of things to help Viking succeed, and that was our goal. That was our mission. That's what we were taught by Dick Bangham. So it's been a pleasure to do these videos so far. I hope you like what you see so far. Not see, but hear from me. And I'll be back before too long with part 3, hopefully. So anyway, thank you for your time. I hope you're doing well, and we'll talk to you soon.